Hey all, Mark Vicente here. Just a quick note to let you know I've started a new podcast and YouTube channel. Don't worry, WTF is on my mind is not going anywhere. The new podcast is called Remember Your Greatness, and it's going to cover more of the good stuff in life. Growth, authenticity, courage, creativity, autonomy, spirituality, the embodied kind, not the delusional kind. What I've learned from mentoring people and the big questions of life. There are 2 episodes up so far, and in the second episode, I do something I've never done before. I get a very public coaching session from someone I admire to help me with my fears about this new venture. It's a deeply vulnerable and powerful exploration, so go check it out if you'd like. I'm going to put the details of this new podcast and channel in the show notes. If you're interested, join me over there, or you can just stay here in WTF, or even better, both. All right, let's get into this episode. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Today I have Mr. Richard Grannon with me. Why do you always have Richard on, Mark? I'm glad you asked. There are 2 reasons. One reason is he's smarter than me, and I like having smart people around me because there's a lot of shit I don't know. And the other is because I can have conversations with Richard Grannon where there are no landmines. There's nothing that I cannot talk about. Unlike some quarters in the world right now where you can't say certain things because you'll offend everybody, Richard Grannon is unoffendable. I'm not inviting you people to attack him and say horrible things, but I found that he's unoffendable by me anyway.
I'm infinitely curious. A state of infinite curiosity protects one from being fragile and easy to offend.
Is that true?
Yes,
it is true. So it's trait openness, right? Or is that openness? Is that what it is?
It's trait openness, I suppose. You know, I listened to Terrence McKenna a lot when I was growing up, and I took acid a lot when I was growing up, and so things just become fascinating. They're just fascinating. Like, why would you say that? That's fascinating.
Oh, yes. I remember that voice. Well, listen, I'm curious about a whole bunch of things. I had a conversation with a team of AI people that you know, and they were asking me, as they were programming this thing, about my thoughts on psychology, on Freud, on Jung, on God, on the transpersonal. And I said, listen, the person to talk to is Richard Grannon, because he breathes this shit. He thinks about it all the time. So I thought, well, why don't we just do a podcast and you guys can take the transcript and feed it in and see where you get to.
Okay.
But where I want to start is, so I think of traditional psychology as having a lot of limitations. One we've discussed in the past, which is like, doesn't deal with morality adequately or at all. When it should, it tends to not think of a soul. And I see that, I believe, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe that, you know, Freud kind of won, and we seem to be this bag of impulses to be dealt with and medicated and whatever, versus that there's this whole deeper transpersonal aspect to us that I believe Freud was not interested in. Jung was a student of Freud's, right?
Yes, he was a student, and Alfred Adler was a peer of Freud's.
Right. So it seems that Jung was interested in all those things. And whenever I read Jung, I'm like, why are people not talking about this more? Like, why is traditional psychology not talking about this more? And then we got into the topic, the AI gentleman and myself, about God as related to psychology. And I said, well, I think that's transpersonal. So I thought I would just ask you to help me understand, because I don't have a great depth of understanding. Why did Freud win? What happened? What are the limitations to psychology, if I'm correct? And what's missing? Is it these are simple questions. Is it the transpersonal that's missing? What do you think we should be looking at? What would be more complete and whole? You have 50 minutes.
Are there shortcomings in psychology? Yes. Why did Freud win out? I saw something recently that I'd actually, have to be honest with you, I've never seen before. It was a letter of complaint written by Jung to Freud, in which he essentially accused Freud of running a cult. So Freud had a group of adoring acolytes around him, and Jung's complaint was, you always position yourself as the one who offers the penetrative analysis, and you subject yourself to none of the same. So the group is not running on egalitarian coordinates. He didn't say you're the cult leader. He said you're the leader of this group, and you're enjoying, Jung felt, the position of power that you enjoy by analyzing and penetrating other people, and never doing it reflexively to yourself, which is quite narcissistic and quite cult-like. Why did that win? So in the holy trinity of psychoanalysis, we've got Freud, which you could essentially say is the sick person model, the pervert child model, the child that is full of lust, which is it's a strange and perverted model. I mean perverted, not necessarily sexually, just a perversion away from nature. Jung's model, which was brilliant and insightful, but too loose, too yin, too chaotic. And that's why you get a lot of people who don't really understand or just haven't read Jung projecting what they think Jung was about onto him. And then you have Adler. So Jung was not instrumentalizable. He wasn't a useful whip. He wasn't a useful stick to beat people with. Adler demanded too much of the analyst and of the client in terms of personal responsibility. So I think people spewed out the church of Jung because it was too vague. They spewed out the church of Adler because it just demanded way too much. It's a very direct, confrontational system of psychoanalysis. And Freud is kind of the perfect mix. You can... I really think there's something deeply pathological going on here. Freud, people accuse him of being a charlatan. I wouldn't say he was a charlatan, but I would say he was delusional and highly narcissistic. Freud wanted to don the robes of a doctor. He was a neurologist, and then become the first and greatest doctor of the mind. And I think humans looked at that and went, yeah, that sounds cool. That sounds like a good way of gaining power and dominating people, because you can't do that with Jung's system, and you damn sure can't do it with Adler's system. And so because this is a bit controversial, because there is a sickness and a corruption in the human soul, that's the one we chose. I don't think it's some grand conspiracy. I used to suspect it was, and now I just think it's the easiest thing to model and to quickly gain power. So if it's a power seeking exercise, you would choose Freudian psychoanalysis.
So, I mean, I have so many questions, but I was wondering about, is it also that Freud was more titillating in some ways in terms of the things he was coming out with? Because I would have thought, my understanding of Jung is Jung not necessarily emphasizes, but includes a higher perspective, or a sort of, quote unquote, higher self, a connection to something deeper and vaster. And I would have thought that would be entertaining for people or interesting for people. I'm just interested that they didn't go that direction, and they went the direction that seems more titillating to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is interesting for people, but it's interesting. I'll just be rude. And then if people get offended, I don't know, they can collect their tears in a cup and post it to me, and I'll drink
They
it.
They can do an offering.
Yeah, I'll drink their tears. Who loves Jung? Hippies. Who loves Jung? People who don't want to be held accountable. Who loves Jung? Spiritual bypassers and psychoanalytic bypassers. Because Jung, when Jung was writing about politics and economics and history, he was precise. When he wrote about psychology, somebody the other day just said to me, "Oh, you like psychology? I'm going to read the Red Book." And I'm like, okay, she has a PhD. I said, that's in science. I said, oh, yeah. Why are you reading the red book? Oh, I've been told it's wonderful. I said, get back to me in a week. It's one of the most disappointing books ever written. And let me say this. Freud, Jung, Adler, more intelligent than me, trailblazers. They were geniuses. And it's not only hippies that like Jung. There are serious good therapists. I use Jungian therapy. I use Jungian concepts, and it's powerful, but it's vague. So who brings the boundary? The user. And some users cannot bring the boundaries. They cannot. They're not wired that way, or they can't do it. Freud is titillating. Yes, absolutely. I think people are incredibly naive when they think that, Freud was saying things like, oh, the son is sexually attracted to his mother and wants to castrate his father. It's pre-social media days. You've got to say something wild and crazy to get the seminars, to get the book sales, to get people arguing. This is an outrage. How could you say that? And then you've got the apologists that come later and say, well, he didn't mean it like that. He meant it symbolically. I don't know who's more naive. He wanted to be famous. He was a man. He wanted to smoke cigars, live in London, and take cocaine every day. He lived a good life. What do you want from me? It's entrepreneurialism. I'm going to say it's like people on the internet who wear crazy clothes and then say offensive stuff, and they know some people are going to loathe them and other people are going to adore them. And I think there was this kind of posturing that occurred where people went, no, I understand the Oedipal complex. I understand the Electra complex. It's notion, it's instinct, it's blind. It's a provocation. It's just a provocation from a very narcissistic, very highly intelligent man who was not primarily focused on the good of his clients in the way that I would argue Jung was more, but Jung had other objectives. The person who's most interested in the good of his clients is Adler, which is why the system is so hard. Because if you actually want people to improve, you have to give them a fairly rigorous and difficult disciplined approach to psychotherapy. Jung's ambition was more mystical. Sorry to go on.
Can you give me a sense of Adler's approach?
Yeah. Everything you're doing, we'll just pretend.
Yeah.
Everything you're doing, you want to do. Well, everything. Yeah, everything. I've got depression, mate. Yeah, because you want depression. Fucking hell, La. No, I'm a victim. No, you're not a victim. This is a game you're playing. This is just some weird game you're playing because you benefit from playing the role of a person who's depressed. Well, Dr. Adler, why would I do that? Because you're a coward. Because you lack courage. That's Adler, and I love him. I love him.
That actually makes I mean, there's two things for me. The one is a lot of that shit's true. The other is that shit gets abused so much in cults.
Oh, yeah, it would. See, so Freud, Jung, Adler in the wrong hands, it's just torture. It's psychological torture. Adler, lifelong, naive, utopian, socialist, humanist. The socialism of 1910. It's different. It's a different thing. Love, peace for all. I need to make you strong so that you can cope with reality. Everything was coming from, in my understanding, it was coming from a very, very good place. But it's, and I've just given a cartoonish version of it. It's highly characterized. But that's the essence of it. What are you doing? Oh, I'm depressed. I have anxiety. I can't sleep. Yes, because you benefit from that. Well, what's my real problem? You lack courage. You are afraid to grow up. You're afraid to grow up.
So a lot of that makes sense to me because, I mean, when you challenge somebody on the thing they're attached to, like let's say depression, I'm not saying depression doesn't exist, please understand. But when you challenge somebody, as you know, you'll find the resistance to letting go of it because there's something worse than the state that they're in.
Yes, I think, in more modern times, I'll give credit where it's due. I learned this from Anthony Robbins. The 1980s Anthony Robbins, he had this cassette series called Unlimited Power that I listened to a lot.
I remember that, yeah.
So the very clever Adlerian style question, and he was also Anthony Robbins is a big fan of Viktor Frankl as well, is if I can remove your depression from you today, what are you afraid of losing? And that's a beautiful
Yes.
question to ask.
Yes.
That's a beautiful question to ask, because we all lose. It's not just a win. If I recover from narcissistic abuse, what now? Yeah, now. We've got to process it, but you've got to say yes now, and in 20 minutes it will be gone. Gone. You're never getting it back. Oh. And once you hit that pause, you know there's benefit in the negative state. So this is the kind of thing, it's very challenging. So to come back to your original question, Freud's not challenging like that. Freud's not challenging. It's like, it's your childhood. It's in the unconscious. It's a mystery. Freud was a peddler of mysteries. Jung believed in mystery. If you see the difference in that.
Yeah. Just to back the Tony Robbins Adler thing, what's so interesting, and I've experienced this with the clients that I mentor and with myself, where there's some issues, some place that we feel stuck, and the alternative is freedom. Freedom is terrifying.
Yes.
Freedom is horrible. So it's much better to have the constraints of the thing that we're struggling with, which is why as you said, the Adlerian perspective actually makes sense to me.
I think in all kindness, we can say growing up is frightening. Agency is frightening. If I have freedom and I don't have this problem, fucking hell, who am I going to blame when things go wrong? I guess it would just be me.
Yeah. So Adler was basically, so NLP and NXIVM, the at-cause model, was what he was trying to get to.
Yes. And I think, I don't want to give credit where it shouldn't go, but Raniere, what you've told me about Raniere, we can say that was not a stupid man. Obviously, he's an evil man, but he was a high IQ man, and he was very, very well researched, because it's incredibly powerful. Now, I would just add this, that Adlerian style that I characterized, when I do it, it's loving and joking. And it's like, come on, mate, come on, spit it out. What are you scared of here? And it's private. I think Raniere would have done that in public. And I think in some of these unlimited power seminars, it becomes public. When you shift from the public to from the private, safe space to the public, it automatically becomes something else and can get quite nasty.
Yeah, I was in another group. I won't mention names, but in front of 1,000 people, you were told by the cult leader, why do you have this problem? Because you want it. Admit you want it. And the person's no lube, right? They're not ready for it yet. It's like, what do you mean I want it? And you're a piece of shit because you can't acknowledge that you want it. And of course, they're so in their trauma, they can't take anything in.
That's horrifying. That's horrible. But I mean, so you can start with a really, really good concept and you can turn it into psychological abuse. No, that has to be, you have to cook the client very, very gently. And this is, when I used to coach, those kinds of conversations wouldn't be done until the 6th or 7th hour of coaching. And you've got a lot of rapport, a lot of trust, and you don't challenge, you don't throw the Adler cold water in the face on the main issue. You practice on a side issue.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, okay, can we Adler this? Yeah.
Yeah.
You see how we got through that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, and you grade.
And sometimes the side issue might be a metaphor of the major issue, but not necessarily.
Usually the side issue is bullshit.
Yeah, no, of course.
Again, I'm saying that with love. Like I am invested in human beings getting better. And the simple truth is that, look, okay, so let's reverse it so people don't feel as triggered. I'm in therapy. I'm a vulnerable human being. You think I don't throw distractions at my therapist? You don't think I tell him, oh, the issue is this? I mean, and sometimes I'm genuinely confused.
Yeah.
And I will say, my problem is, I used to go to therapy because I thought I was a sex addict. I wasn't a sex addict. I was a codependent. But it was more manly for me to be a sex addict than for me to be a codependent. So I clung to the identity of sex addiction. Freud wouldn't have got through that. He would have gone, yes, because your mother used to bathe you too long when you were 5. Jung would have babbled about archetypes. Adler would have caught it. Adler would have got hold of it.
That's very interesting. So I hadn't done very much research about Adler at all. That actually makes a lot of sense. So let's swing back to God and morality. And I'm not saying that they're the same thing. I'm not putting them in the same bucket. But the absence of morality and the absence of this very broad term God, did that exist in psychology early on, or did Freud just reject that?
I think what we can't do is we can't divorce people and their ideas and their books and their essays from the times they live in. So our mutual friend, Dr. Paul Taylor, taught me a term which is epistemes. So every period has an episteme or episteme, and it's from epistemology. It's how
Episteme sounds like a disease. Episteme.
I have
like
a
a
terrible,
malaise.
I have a terrible case of the episteme. Let's call it episteme. And we are like you and I now in 2025, we can talk about this, that, and the other thing, but we can't do it outside of our episteme. That's a given. So in that time, the flourishing of psychology, so 1885, Nietzsche writes, God is dead. We have killed him. What festivals and what rituals will we now create to wash the blood of God from our hands and to feel less guilty? 1887, Dostoevsky finishes Brothers Karamazov, which is all about the terrible tragedy of losing God, even as we acknowledge some of these priests are liars, they're corrupt, they have sex with their followers, there's corruption. You still need God. That was the Brothers Karamazov. And then psychology really sort of formally establishes itself around that time, maybe around 1870. And then from there, out of mesmerism, hypnotism, table knocking, tarot reading, psychic readings, the field of psychology grows and grows in power. There was no space by the time we get to 1902 Vienna, where they're all hanging out together, to be talking about God. It would just be you would be considered a bumpkin, a low IQ country bumpkin if you were talking about God and religion. So it wasn't cool. It wasn't cool.
Which is actually still the case today to some degree.
Yeah, because we live in this disgraceful postmodern degenerate nastiness. That's why the world is. It's why the world is so awful. I think it's something to do with. I think the industrial. Well, I don't want to go off, but the Industrial Revolution probably gave humanity mass psychosis, because we're just a terrible evolutionary match for the technology that we have access to now. It drove us all crazy, and we all live insane now.
Do you mean because we lost meaning during that?
I don't think we should have as much stuff as we do. We're just not a good evolutionary match. The development was too rapid. If we went from what we had and the technology we had in 1750 to the technology we had in 2025 over a 50,000 year time period, we would probably be okay. But we didn't.
That's interesting.
We didn't just a few centuries, and it's way too much. And it of course it forced us to get rid of God. Look at people's descriptions of the wars, the Austro-Prussian Wars and World War One. People looking around going, I used to believe in God. Did you see what happened there? Did you see the massacre there? Did you see the group, the mechanization of war that technology gave us, the capacity to kill so many people? And of course, people just started saying, fuck this. There's no God here. There's no space to be discussing God. So it wasn't. No, I mean, and these were people, they were all power seeking. Obviously, Jung had an ego, Adler had an ego. They wanted money, they wanted power. And the thing to do would be to say, we're the pioneers of a new branch of medicine that is mind medicine, if you like, if you don't want to say psychology. We're the mind medicine guys.
Just thinking about something, a meme I saw on social media, and we know it's got to be true because it was on social media. Somebody was saying that we were designed to know 30 people, not thousands, the way we interact with people.
Yeah, there's a number that's been given by a man who's an anthropologist or an evolutionary psychologist, and he said the maximum number of people you should know is 150, and throughout most of human history. And that number is given a special designation if the guy's called Jones. It's the Jones limit. You should know about 30 to 50 people. All 30 to 50 people should know your name. When you push it up to 150, that's very high. Beyond 150, criminality goes through the roof.
Really? Why?
Lack of accountability.
Lack of
You're not going to,
accountability.
you're not going to catch me. Stick people in a city, criminality is, I don't know,
That's true.
multiplied by the power of 100, because you're not people anymore. You don't mean anything to me. I'm not accountable to you. You know, it's this old left-wing, not to turn it into politics, but the left-wing, right-wing psychology philosophy. Left-wing people will tend to see people as baseline good. Right-wing people will tend to see them as baseline naughty. If you, from a psychological point of view, see humans as essentially potential of quite a lot of naughtiness, you want to impose more boundaries on them. If you see them all as essentially good, and if you just set them free, it'll all just be peace and love and fiestas, then that's why you lean that way. But no, the research indicates obviously that's not the case. And yes, you're right. We should know 30 to 50 people.
Yeah, I think that in terms of the two extremes you describe, I think I'm betwixt the two. I see a lot of goodness and I see a lot of badness.
You can have both. I think it's very sensible.
Both.
Yin and yang. Expect the best from people, but be ready for when people do evil also.
Right. I'm kind of arrived at that point where I expect people to be who they are. And if I'm not delusional, which I often am in relationships and friendships, if I'm not, I go, oh, I see that thing. So that could mean this could happen. And I'm just, try to be in reality about that. That's the ideal. So just back to God. Well, no, let's just back further up. What I said doesn't make sense, but doesn't matter. I know what I'm trying to say. So I had lunch yesterday with a psychologist, and I have a lot of friends who are psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, whatever. And a lot of them have said to me, we talk about the DSM-5, but they've just talked about the limits that they have, especially, having licenses that they want to keep for various reasons and places they can't go. And in the discussion yesterday, we were chatting about morality as well, which, you talk about a lot. Can you sort of set up and explain what the constraints are of, and I'm talking about traditional psychology, where the limitations are, where it falls apart, given that human beings are very complicated creatures?
Yeah, it's fairly simple. I think it's this childlike role play that we're doctors. And I mean medical doctors. Obviously, there are people with PhDs. Yes. But the idea that we're going to dress up, we're going to put on a white coat and a stethoscope and explore the mind the way a doctor explores the body, it's nonsense and it's sick. The psychology as an institution in psychiatry is built on a fantasy. And because it's built on a fantasy, what's manifested today is sick and neurotic. That's not an opinion. People can look up the peer-reviewed research. There was one done, I can't remember their names. It came out of the University of Liverpool in 2019. And there were 3 psychiatrists. 1 was from Liverpool, 2 was from London. So it was a Scouser and 2 Cockneys. And they said, if we analyze psychiatric diagnoses and psychiatric prescriptions and treatments to the same standard that medicine, physical medicine, is done, how would it score? 95% of it is pure quackery. It is totally, and I love psychology. I don't want psychiatry and psychology to disappear. I'm a supporter of it, but we must have an honest conversation about the replication crisis. And for the love of God, we have to have an honest conversation about the fact that the standards by which we academic psychologists measure ourselves are dog shit compared to medicine. It's awful. And we go, that's a good test. We got a good result. If you put that into medicine, they wouldn't publish it because it wouldn't pass peer review. We pat ourselves on the back for garbage research. Not all of psychology, not all of the time, blah, 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 blah. But people can't deny it. There's a replication crisis in some areas of psychology. You can't even replicate 30% of the research. What's that? That's called quackery. That's just quackery. You're just making stuff up.
I'm with you there. Because you have to be able to replicate what you're doing.
You have to be able to replicate a claim. And this is very important because what's going to happen in the next year, I claim on YouTube, is there's going to be a there's going to be a credentialist inquisition about who and who can't talk about psychology and psychological concepts. And people are going to come waving their PhDs from institutions that are engaged in quackery. They're engaged in charlatanism. And then everybody's going to get very confused and they'll go, who should we be listening to? So to come back around to your question, what's it missing? What psychology is missing is epistemological humility. We need to be much more open about what we don't know. And we have to stop posturing that when I ask a client, how do you feel today? And he says, happy, that's not the same as a brain scan. It's not the same. There are so many confounding factors there. And we're not being honest about that. The institution's being incredibly arrogant. We know, we did the research, go and check it, peer reviewed, published. And what? So what? It's garbage.
I'm with you there. I think the thing I'm thinking though at the same time, so yes, there's a problem with replication, etc., adequate testing. But then also I find, I've worked with a lot of different therapists / psychologists, coaches over the years. There are places that I find I cannot go with traditional therapy. Just sort of very deep, archetypal, dream type things that are very fuzzy and fluffy, very Jungian, that have, dreams, as you know, they're so rich in telling you what's going on or what could be going on, but like you can't really test that shit. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's, but I think a lot of it's valid because it does have results. Certainly I've had results from examining things that are very non-clinical.
You're in the realm of spirituality and mysticism and philosophy. Psychology is originally a branch of philosophy. Maybe it needs to wind its little neck in, take the stethoscope off and start saying, look, guys, we're going to try to be scientific, which they should try to be scientific, but it's not science. It can't be science because the tool of observation is that which is being observed. It's like a microscope pointing at itself. A human's looking at a human and making assessments. How? That's impossible. We can try to be scientific in terms of behavior. What you're describing is a focus on purely subjective experience. There are schools of psychology, Jungian psychodynamic theory would do it. But generally across the board, yes, it's limited in that regard because exercise and empathy, you're running a counseling school. How are you going to put that into the syllabus and then test someone so you can pass them out and say, there's your counseling certificate? You can't. It's more art than science. When you've had good experience with therapists, and people in the comments, when you've had good experience with therapists, you're going to find it's because the therapist was very skilled and not because they were doing an amazing system.
That is true. That is true. I was just thinking about and you've probably had experiences like this, I'll dream about people. Maybe I was thinking about a dream I had about my father, where I was with him. He seemed young and strong again. And I just wept and wept and wept and wept and wept and woke up feeling a level of resolution that I hadn't forever. And it was such and it not only healed the perceived relationship between my father and I, but also healed something within me as a man.
Yes.
Immeasurable. I have no way to measure about it. I have no way to talk about it. I have no way to test it at all. And my feeling is that these things need to be included in the therapeutic process, or allowed for, I should say. They don't have to be included. They should be allowed for.
They're supposed to be. Have you had the experience with therapists where they just wouldn't go there with you and stuff like that?
Yeah, where they talk about something as fantasy or delusional, and they just don't want. They're not interested in that. They want what's right in front of us, which I understand that too. But I'm also interested in the fact, how when you're, let's say you're in therapy and you get asked a question or you get nudged in a certain direction, you can go off on a tangent that's a distraction. You can also go off on a tangent because neurologically, and I use that word loosely, that's where you're going. In your revelation, in your thinking, you're heading down a path that you did not expect, and suddenly you're in a memory and you're like, holy shit, what's this memory? But that memory bears fruit.
My perhaps bad faith interpretation. So if I've observed therapy being done, and I've observed therapy being done very, very badly. But my bad faith interpretation of that, Mark delivers a story of a dream that he had, and he says it was very emotionally moving and it created some resolution in him. And the therapist replies, that's a distraction, let's focus on this. That's the therapist saying, I don't know what the fuck to do with that, mate, sorry. And you're making me feel incompetent, so now I'm going to make it your fault and call it a distraction and move us back into my area of competency. I've seen that in trauma. I've seen that with sexual trauma. I've seen that with people who can't deal with CSA in their clients because they haven't resolved their own issues. It's no, a good therapist should be able to at least be able to say to you, tell me about the dream. How did you feel before? How did you feel afterwards? What was the experience of the dream? When you say there was resolution, what part of you felt resolved? And how does did it stick? And if it sticks, what does that mean? The father in you revitalized, reborn, strong again. What could that mean? What do you think it means? These are that should be somewhere any therapist can go to with you.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? There's I did an episode with I don't know if you heard this one with Karen Unterreiner. She used to be in Nixium. She was with Ranieri for like 40 years. Remember that one?
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, we had that process called the EM tech, which I told you a bit about. What was so interesting, because Karen actually EM'd me a bunch, she was very good. Because not every single thing about the EM tech was bad. She had the ability, no matter what came out of my mouth, to use it as a metaphor of an actual thing. So she didn't ever said like, well, that's not valid. She just, like, whatever it was, like, it could be a fucking vision I had in that moment. It could be, I saw a squirrel in the corner that wasn't really there. She'd go, okay, great, let's talk about the squirrel. And she'd go down and find, the squirrel is, of course, the metaphor. Could be a ghost of a squirrel. It's the metaphor of something. And it was very, very effective. I was just thinking aloud about that kind of flexibility,
I'll reflect something back to you. I did martial arts for years because I was mentally ill as a child and I thought it was going to save me. So I cycled through and I trained obsessively. Aikido, Ninjutsu, Wing Chun, Tai Chi. And one of the things I started to notice fairly quickly was that there were good practitioners and bad practitioners. And I was like, but we're all told to do this system. We're all told to train this. He can make it work. He can't. And it just ends up being, it's down to the practitioner. It's not really the art. I can show you amazing street fighters who all they ever did was traditional Taekwondo. And I can show you guys who all they did was MMA and they can't fucking hold a carrot in a street fight. So what's that down to? It's down to the individual. The point I'm leading towards here is, back to the empathy exercise, how do you box that and how do you make it profitable? And how do you make it something that you can, we run the Institute of the State of New York of Psycho, blah, 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 blah. You train with us, you will all be able to do this. No one can promise you that in this realm. If you're, she sounds like what Jung would call an introverted intuitive. So she's a pattern seer and she can feel you at great levels of empathy and she's patterning you at the unconscious. I can't sell you that. I can't give you that. Oh, no. Fuck. We can't systemize it. Oh, pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah. 100%. It's actually interesting because she's brilliant and she's an actuary. She's very, very smart and pattern recognition off the charts. I want to go back to something that you've said, you and I have discussed, and I want to make sure people can understand, because you talk a lot about the importance of morality and how if we don't include morality, we're screwed. And I think what happens is people think of morality as rules or religion.
Yes.
Hey, quick interlude. If you're liking these conversations and want to help me keep expressing what is on my mind, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and maybe even follow the podcast wherever you listen. And if you want to go a step further in supporting the show and getting access to some behind-the-scenes rants, you can join me over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/ patreon.com/Mark Vicente. It really does make a difference. All right, back to the episode. What do you mean when you say, if we don't have morality, we're screwed?
So I'm probably somewhere on Jung's introverted intuitive spectrum. And so when I worked with people, which I haven't done for 8 years, I could see their map. I could feel, and it was like I was looking at an engine or a structure, and I could see where there was weakness. And I'd go, oh, when we circle around a conversation, it drops here. It was like background here and it drops. It's background here and it drops. What's that? And I'm like, what? And then I'd be saying, what's missing? They can't tell right from wrong. They can't tell right from wrong. Now, just 2 weeks ago when I was in Georgia, I did some research on neuroscience. There's a part of your brain that is responsible for morality that when you are highly traumatized shrinks in volume. And when I drag people kicking and screaming to practice moral judgment, they practice, I've only just found this out, the neural circuitry, like a muscle, they re-strengthen that part of the brain and it grows in volume, I think is what's happening. So let's do it philosophically first. If you can't tell right from wrong and you're flopping around in the slop of moral relativism, who's that advantageous to? Abusers, exploiters. You don't know what's right or wrong. I could do anything to you and you could be like, well, in his culture, this is, he's just being him. He has his feeling. He's a victim of a victim. No, if I do something like that to you, you should pick up a bat and hit me in the head with it, for God's sake, or do, metaphorically. You should do something about it. Stop it. When the morality is weak, people's ability to defend themselves is weak. This is right. I will do that. This is wrong. I will not do that. This starts to feed into, when you look at the neuroscience, the parts of the brain that are responsible for executive functioning and decision making. And it literally decreases in volume the more traumatized and abused somebody is. So morality, I can put forward a fairly watertight argument that it's actually a key element of the brain of a trauma victim making their recovery. And then philosophically, I would say, how the hell are you going to expect a human being to navigate this world without knowing right from wrong? That's crazy. But also at the brain level, there is a lack of volume. There is a deficiency there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I did not know that you could then rebuild that too.
Yeah, it's neuroplasticity. So we know this. There's tons of research done on it, but the most famous is on hippocampal shrinkage and then hippocampal regrowth. So with narcissists and psychopaths, what we can see is parts of the brain that relate to impulse control and empathy are actually shrunk, probably because they've just never used those parts. And then if you train them up, those parts of the brain can regrow. Listen, past the age of 25, regrowth is slow. You're talking about years of committed work, but it is possible.
When you're an old dog like me.
That's right. We're old now.
Okay, God. I want to get back to God.
Okay.
And the reason I want to talk about it is, so I'm in Texas, right? And like the radio is full of preachers and shit.
I love it.
And it's actually very entertaining. I'm enjoying Texan radio. It's some great music and a lot of preachers on Sunday. But there's this thing that happens, things that people say. They talk about, God's been destroyed. Man has put himself at the top, and God's nowhere, kind of thing. And if you don't have God, you're screwed or whatever. And there's a part of me that is, cult sensitive to coercion and all these things that go, yeah, but your version of God, I don't think should be in charge, because your version of God is an authoritarian prick. Your version of God is an Old Testament psychopath. So I don't think that one should be in charge of fucking anything and make decisions in the government. And so I am way on board with a lot of people on the left, and like, yeah, that version, fuck that version. But
yes.
Well, should I wait? Do you have a thought?
No, you go ahead. Go ahead. They're building.
Okay, yeah. But there is something missing. There is. Yeah. And it's not a white man with a beard on a fluffy cloud who's an authoritarian prick.
Don't you disrespect my God. He's
I know.
beautiful, white, Caucasian, Greek, Jewish fellow, and he's mad as hell. And he doesn't want anyone to wank. He's very upset about the wanking.
Is he also a closet pedophile?
He's got weird predilections towards kids for sure.
There you go. Yep. I know this is going to piss some people off, but like, I think what I'm talking about is
never mind. It's
never
okay.
mind if I piss them off. Yeah,
it's okay.
But there's a symbol that people hold up, and I just don't think that's the real thing. And I'm not saying I know what the real thing is, but there is a connection to. It's interesting. I was talking to another psychologist the other day about when people have breakthroughs, and sometimes they have breakthroughs with prayer and meditation and supplication and whatever, but sometimes they just have breakthroughs in nature. In fact, many, many, many people have breakthroughs with sustained contact with nature.
Yes.
So there's something profound and deep and connective and unifying.
You're saying that they have a healing experience when they're in an environment that they're a good evolutionary match to, instead of a busy, hot, car beeping city with Taco Bells and aggressive people everywhere.
I believe I am saying that, which leads me to think then that our natural tendency is towards that connection if only we have the right conditions.
Yes. I like sci-fi. I'm going to bring up sci-fi in every interview you do with me.
And you do, and I love it.
Every thing that we do in science fiction and in science is anthropomorphic and earthbound. Space ships. A ship travels across water, not through space. There's a captain of a spaceship and he's going on a journey. That's not how it works. So we anthropomorphize everything and we make it earthbound. And I think that's the problem with God. Obviously, God isn't a man. He's not a really tall man who lives on a fucking cloud. But then you would point to scripture, and I have this discussion with my friend Adam, the Imam. It's there in Islam as well. References to God's jugular, references to God's heartbeat. Yes, poetically, fine. If you take it literally, you've gone mad. There's no man, there's no woman, there's no human. God is not human. If God is God, God is the God of all worlds. And I think what we can take back is we can reject all humanization of God. And we can reject anybody who says, I know what God wants. God wants you to do this. God wants you to do that. In Islam, they would say that's idolatry. Shirk.
Really?
No.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's called shirk.
I did not know that.
It's called shirk. So it's pretty interesting when you see the manifestations in the world of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. This is a common theme. Yeah. It's actually anti the religion. It's anti the religion.
See, I knew that about Christianity. I didn't know that so much about Islam.
Yes, because a lot of the people who espoused this philosophy and believed in something called Wadat al-Wujud were killed. Because you can't, like Adler, like Jung, like Freud, you can't take power from that. Look, if I say to you, all of us only exist at the will of God, and you cannot take a breath unless God wills it, immediately God's here. He's with you. You are his will. Everything is his will. All of it is his will. If he wills, it. If that transcendent force wills you not to be, you cease to be. It's frightening. It's destabilizing to power structures. And then somebody comes along and says, hey, pick up a sword, go and chop their hands off. Yes, my lord, are they not the creations of God? Well, yes, but they're saying the words wrong. Torture them. It doesn't work. If you have truly faithful people, and it comes from the direct experience, the direct mystical experience that is rooted in awe and reverence, where we say, what does astrophysics tell us? In our galaxy, there are billions of stars. I think every third star has a planet. So there's billions of planets. How many galaxies are there? Billions. That, the God, if you want to talk to me about God, I'm talking about that God, the God of all of that. I ain't talking about the God of England or the God of Earth. That's not God. That's That's our narcissistic, petty fantasy. So I think we can clear up the God issue, but we have to say it is a totally transcendent, unknowable force. And you go, I don't want to not know. That's your narcissism. Stop, relax, don't get anxious. You'll never know. Well, but I want to, the book. I have the book and the hat, and I get to kids. You're ruining it. No. Well, sorry, dude. Like, you have no more right to be here than a wasp. You have no more right to be here than a mouse. And if it's unwilled that you're here, puff, you're gone. So the very essence of the lived mystical experience, name it, Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, it's all the same. It all comes back to the same. It's reverence, it's awe, it's the unknowable. It is a great mystery. When people try and solve the mystery and they go, no, in my book it says, then it stinks. It's dogmatic, it rots, it smells of poopy. And people do poopy things when they're reading poopy scripture, and they're trying to enforce the will of man and say it's God. Then they're hypocrites. That's what a kafir is. That's the main enemy of Islam, is one who knows, but they hide the truth in the earth. So it should be rooted in that's the submission of Islam. I've come to Christianity through Islam. That's been my cycle. It's allowed me to get back into Christianity, yeah. But it's the absolute submission. It's the absolute submission to a will that is not your will. And it creates humility and awe and reverence and appreciation and love and community and kindness. When we say, no, I'm not doing that, I'm doing that, then power. I want power, I want domination, I want hierarchies, and then we'll be torturing and genociding and all of the evil.
You know, there's something you said, there's a word, kids, and I have to go back and probably cut that out because YouTube will have a conniption about that. I'll have to go scrub back and find it.
Just cut that bit out about religious people.
I think I have to take the thing about the something with kids because they'll be upset. But it got me thinking that, you know, there's some really amazing scientists out there, mathematicians. It's a guy called Donald Hoffman, and Donald Hoffman he uses the VR headset as a metaphor. He says, you know, what you think is reality is the equivalent of wearing a VR headset and getting confused thinking that's reality. This experience you're having is like that. It makes me think, though, that, you know, the way you've just described the supplication, the surrender, is what some scientists talk about as there is no free will. We're immersed in the sea of all potentiality. You know, like David Bohm and those kinds of people, you know, that's the way they would think about it. And I do find that scientists that are open-minded arrive at some of the same understandings. I used to believe that free will existed. I'm not so certain anymore. And the only thing that is worried about that is my ego structure as a human. Who's terrified of there being like, no, I have free will. I insist I exist. I insist I'm important. I insist. So just to sort of go back then, this thing we're talking about, this thing is missing. And I'll tell you what I mean. How should I say this? You know what? I'm going to say this bluntly. That's how I'm going to say this. Pretty much
Speak your truth.
Speak my truth.
From the heart.
Let's see, is that pretty much every single expert that I've spoken to that's left a cult and come out and they're a cult expert has abandoned that aspect of themselves. They got hurt by something that was associated to God or religion or spirituality, whatever it was. And so in abandoning the system that hurt them, they've abandoned their connection completely. Some are fucking miserable. And I won't go too much further on how miserable they are, but fucking miserable. And the light has the light that to me feels is still available sort of has gone out because they don't want it. And I see that, by the way, with many, many academics. That to me is the thing that's missing. And I don't care if they, you know, whatever you call God connection, whatever, but there is something more to us than just the bag of chemicals. The disconnection from that is what I believe is causing a lot of unhappiness, certainly in a lot of the people that I interact with. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, it reminds me, Terrence McKenna, we started with, and now we'll bring him up again. He spoke of a intense mushroom experience, and he said, it's not just that reality is stranger than you suppose. It's that reality is stranger than you can suppose. So as somebody who's raised Christian by culture, I heard someone the other day say, in this Terrence McKenna vein, I heard them saying Allahu Akbar. And I thought, that's a really interesting phrase. What does that mean? Let me look up the Arabic of that. And it means God is great. But in Arabic, KBR means, it also means God is greater and God is greatest. And it's pointing to not just that God is great, God is greater than you can understand. And any human conceptualization of the greatness of God, I sound kind of religious now. Let's change any conceptualization of the greatness of reality, of the great transcendent force that causes us to continue being in all of our complexity against all mathematical probability. It is so improbable that we exist. It is a miracle every time you fart or pick your nose, you should just disintegrate or become something. But we stay. The will of something is binding this together. And I like that. I thought, oh, that's cool. KBR. God is great. God is greatest. God is greater than you can know, than you could ever know. Reality is stranger than you can suppose. There's humility. So maybe it's, I suggest, something between certainty and uncertainty. Those of us who can live with uncertainty, those of us who can say, I don't know, and live with it, we're probably happier and lighter than the people who are like, no, I know, I'm certain. Certain people, when they're infected with heavy certainty and heavy knowingness, everything they say it stinks, it's rotten. Or it's fresh now, but tomorrow will be dead. And there's no chi moving in them. They're kind of constipated in their life force because they're so fucking certain of everything. So I would just say, yeah, just obviously we could argue the case that from a psychological point of view, we are myth seeking, religion needing, spirituality creating creatures. And if we want to deny that, we're denying a part of who we are.
I think that's accurate. I think I told you this, that when I finished making What the Bleep and I was out touring with it, we did an event in LA, and one of the scientists that was in the film came to me and said, I'm very angry at you. Very angry at you because like you've reduced quantum mechanics down to something very simple for your own needs and own wants. I'm pissed at you. And I go, okay, well, tell me the truth then. He says, well, I don't know if it's the truth, but here's my truth. Quantum mechanics is so mysterious. We don't know what the fuck's going on. And you made it seem like you do know what's going on, and you don't. And neither do I. It was so interesting. And I said, okay, then you get up on stage and say that. And he was like, seriously? I said, get up and say you're pissed. Get up and correct me.
So take that to a religious thing again. Imagine you've got two, it's 3,000 years ago, and you've got two religious men from completely opposing religions, but they can stand in the cave and look at each other and go, neither of us know what the fuck is going on. That's right. Whatever other argument we have, we know that we don't know. Who are you going to kill? Who are you going to torture? You can't, because you don't know anything. You have to know. You have to have the sickness of certainty to then move forward. I saw a thing the other day, speaking of quantum physics. Apparently they've done an experiment recently that I can't understand. It's above my pay grade. But they've shown that through quantum physics, that the what happens in the future changes the past. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. And that you're remembering the future.
Right.
Yeah. I don't understand the math. I've been looking at it thinking like, I need more brain cells. I need more.
Well, listen, some of us, like you and I, were a bit more artistic and philosophical. Some people could do this stuff. I think in all humility, we say, well, let these guys do it. I trust them.
Yeah.
I trust them.
But let me tell you, I've been in two cults. Yes. Two that have said that the teachings have included that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Ranieri kept on saying that. He says, you can change the past. I was like, what? I spent like 8 days trying to figure that shit out. And I was like, and there were all these proofs and different things and like seemingly logical arguments, but I was like, I didn't have a sense of it, you know? I didn't have an actual sense of it. I have a sense of, I can change my quote unquote wiring by taking a journey into what I think of as my past in my body, and I can change my perception of the events such that my present is different. That I can do. But beyond that,
I don't know. I'd probably have to do a few days of fasting and chanting to get there. It would. I mean, maybe like many worlds theory. Maybe you just switch the timeline. Maybe things aren't as fixed as they look.
You know, who is it? Eric Weinstein just hates all the string theory, many worlds theory shit. He says it's just lame. It's just stupid, lame, lazy thinking. Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't understand his thinking yet, but I'm trying.
No, I tried to read his paper that he said showed there was a theory of everything, and the paper starts by saying, "Look, most of this work is lost. I'm really sorry, and I've just badly remembered some of it." And I'm like, I am not going to take you seriously ever again, Mr. Weinstein.
But he's a very interesting cat, isn't he? He's a really interesting dude.
He's killed it for me with that one, because he was so aggressive with it. He was like, this is the theory of everything. It's based on, is it not fractions or fractional, sacred geometry. And I was like, wow, that's cool. Let me try and read this. I'm not a physicist, but I can read the introduction. And I know when somebody's saying, listen, this doesn't really work, and I'm sorry. And I'm like, dude, just like withdraw it and shut up, or do it again and do it properly.
At least he wasn't that certain, you know, which is good. What did you call it? The malaise of certainty, the disease of certainty. I think that's a very good title. I like that.
Disease of certainty. Yeah.
Well,
have we covered everything that you wanted?
Honestly, we've covered what we've covered, and I'm going to hand the transcript off to them. And good luck. Good luck to the AI that's going to scrub this episode and say, what the fuck were they talking about? If AI could swear,
it would.
It would. No, I think what AI will like look at all these different things and realize that there's a lot of different little baskets to talk about and see how they relate. So we'll see. We may have to do a follow-up. But thank you. I mean, I always love these conversations, you know. Like
me too.
I always walk away going, oh, that's interesting. You know, you've reframed and reformatted Allahu Akbar in my mind now. I'm like, huh.
Yeah, I remember when people say that and they're doing something stupid, it's an admission of their own stupidity. They're like, oh, God is greater than I can conceptualize. Yeah, you're doing something really dumb that is not the will of God.
Yes. Mr. Grannon, as always, thank you so much for your time and your brain and your heart and your thoughts.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate it.
And to my audience, I can't even say audience. To my audience, as always, stay curious, okay?
Lekker.
Lekker.